Afternoon from Hill the City. I'm Pastor Margie Gonzalez. Just want to bring you another Take 5 segment. And today I want to read out of Psalm 18. I want to read verses 4 through 6. It says, "The ropes of death entangled me, floods of destruction swept over me. The grave wrapped its ropes around me, and death laid a trap in my path. But in my distress I cried out to the Lord. Yes, I prayed to my God for help, and he heard me from his sanctuary. My cry to him reached his ears." Not to be overly dramatic, but sometimes we experience seasons of pain and anguish that make us feel like we're not going to make it through. We literally feel like we're going to die. But these verses remind us that even though we may feel overwhelmed, if we will cry out to God, he will always hear us. In this psalm that we just read, David is describing his very real feelings during what was one of his most difficult seasons in life. It's actually a psalm of praise, believe it or not, but praise usually follows a major problem or difficulty. And that's what the writer here is describing in verses 4 through 6. He's very vividly describing how he felt when he was being chased by King Saul. You see, King Saul, in his jealousy, wanted to kill David, even though David had done nothing wrong, nothing to deserve death. But David clearly thought that he would die. And he writes, "The ropes of death entangled me." In other words, anxiety, panic attacks, all of these things came on him. He couldn't breathe. It says, floods of destruction swept over me. In other words, I felt like I was drowning in difficulty. Verse 5 says, "The grave wrapped its ropes around me." I couldn't move. I couldn't move forward. I didn't know what to do. Then it says, "Death laid a trap in me." He probably felt like, hey, I'm not going to make it out of this. I'm not going to survive. And the truth is that sometimes we face situations and difficulties that we think are going to kill us. We face hard things that we did nothing to deserve. We go through hard things that don't seem fair. We go through hard things that aren't our fault. But verse 6 says, "In my distress, I cried out to the Lord. Yes, I prayed to my God for help, and he heard me from his sanctuary. My cry to him reached his ears." See, when you're going through the valley of the shadow of death, you have to learn to do what you can do and leave the rest for God. Do what you can do and let God be God in your impossibility. In verse 6, David did the only thing he knew to do: pray. And most of the time, prayer is more than enough. See, David prayed and God heard him. God heard David's cry. There was nothing David could do to change Saul's mind about wanting to kill him. But David knew that God could change everything. And so he prayed. He cried out to God. If you read the rest of this psalm, you'll realize that God did in fact rescue David from King Saul. David prayed, God heard, and God responded. See, sometimes we think our prayers are getting nowhere, but I assure you that God is listening and always working on your behalf. Even when you don't see it, he's working. And when you don't know what to do, pray. So today my question for you is, will you give him your worries and your cares and let him be God in your impossibility? Because God always hears you and he will always answer you. God bless. Psalm 40 verse 1. And it says, "I waited patiently for the Lord to help me, and he turned to me and heard my cry." No human being